Good evening, everybody. I am so excited to bring you some very special guests that are going to be talking about holistic solutions for dementia. Very, very excited. Welcome to those who are joining. Hello, hello. So a lot of us are sold by the pharmaceutical industry that our only solution to dealing with dementia symptoms and or preventing dementia is drugs, or that it's completely random and it absolutely cannot be stopped. Neither of these things are true, and I'm very, very excited to have the brain docs come on and share about their book, The Alzheimer's Solution, and share some holistic solutions to dementia. All right. Welcome, everybody. I'm so glad you are here. All right. Inviting them again. Okay. Hello, welcome.
Hi there, how are you?
Doing good. It's great to see you again. I know I'd interviewed you a while back.
Yes, thank you so much for having me again. It's a pleasure to be here. Congratulations on everything you're doing for this platform. Your work is so important, and I'm really glad to be here, connected with you and everybody else, the lovely audience.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining. So I guess for those who have no idea who you are, I guess I'll just have you introduce yourself and your background.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I'd be happy to. So I am one half of the Brain Docs. It's me and my husband, Dean. I'm sorry he couldn't come in today. He spoke so much today and yesterday that he lost his voice. So
No.
I'm filling in for two people. But I'm a neurologist, which essentially means that I see patients in the clinic and in the hospital. And I'm also a scientist, which means that I do research on dementia, brain health in general, but specifically dementia. And in dementia, my subspecialty is vascular dementia, which is the kind of dementia that is caused by vascular damage or damage to the arteries in the brain. So I do research and I see patients as well. And my husband and I, we created this platform on social media. It's very rare to have neurologists on social media, but we created it because it is a new realm for public health. It is an excellent way of dispersing information about brain health. And as you and your audience knows, unfortunately, there's a lot of misinformation about brain health out there, and it's very difficult for people to decide what is true, what is not true. So we kind of took it upon ourselves, and we're pretty passionate about evidence-based medicine and research and making sure that people have the right kind of information to make best decisions for themselves and their persons with dementia.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I know a couple people asked some questions in the comments when I posted about our interview. So I guess the first one would be if there's folks in your family who's had dementia, or you're worried for whatever reason that you're susceptible to dementia, is there a way to prevent dementia?
Yes. So that is the good news, from multiple different studies from different parts of the world and from our own work, especially in the last 15 years. We have a lot of data, a lot of evidence that shows that when people live a healthy life, which is, a broad term, and we can break that down on what that essentially means. When people take care of their risk factors and they try to live a healthy life, they can prevent dementia, specifically Alzheimer's dementia and vascular dementia. And the numbers vary. Some studies say that 30% of dementia can be prevented. Some papers say that up to 60% can be prevented, 50% can be prevented. And we've seen in our work that if everything is taken care of optimally, you can prevent 80 to 90% of dementia. There's a small percentage of dementia that you can't do anything about. If you have the genes, you're gonna get it. And those usually happen earlier on. You get the symptoms very early. So for example, people start experiencing the symptoms in their 50s and 60s. But that percentage of patients with dementia, specifically Alzheimer's dementia, is only about 3 to 5%. For the rest of them, the genetics is such that it's a It's a synergy between different lifestyle risk factors that ends up. So there's no specific Alzheimer's genetics or genes. It's multiple different genes that take care of things like inflammation. They take care of oxidation. They take care of removal of waste products from the body, or managing your sugar levels, or managing your cholesterol levels. And so if you kind of break it down and if you take care of those risk factors, you can significantly reduce your risk of developing dementia.
Awesome. Yeah, so of course I know the answer to this because I've read the Alzheimer's solution, but for those who haven't, what lifestyle factors would we look for? Because obviously we know the pharmaceutical industry is always pushing out a new pill that is promising all these big things, and thus far we haven't seen results. But in your book, you talk about how you can get better results from as far as preventing and helping with symptoms with the lifestyle changes.
Yeah. So just to kind of look at everything from, from a bigger perspective, dementia, or we usually use the word Alzheimer's and dementia synonymously because dementia is an umbrella term, but most dementias are Alzheimer's disease. 60 to 70% of dementias are Alzheimer's disease. And then about 50 to 20% is vascular dementia. And then 5 to 10% is frontotemporal lobe dementia. And then there's Parkinson's dementia, Lewy body dementia that are kind of smaller. So when people say dementia, they essentially mean Alzheimer's dementia. And it's important for us to differentiate between these two because the lifestyle risk factors and the preventive model doesn't really apply to certain dementias. Like, for example, we don't know that we can prevent frontotemporal lobe dementia. We actually have no evidence that we can prevent Lewy body dementia, not as of yet. But we have a lot of information on Alzheimer's disease and vascular dementia, and that's good enough. That's a big chunk of dementia.
Yeah.
And it is a condition like, for example, Alzheimer's, which unfortunately now, it's every household has either a grandfather or a parent or an uncle or someone they know that is experiencing Alzheimer's disease because the numbers are just crazy high. In the United States alone, up to 7 million people are suffering from Alzheimer's dementia. And so it's something that doesn't start, at a particular point in our life. It's almost like a spectrum. Like at every moment, even you and I have the pathological changes going on in our brains that could potentially lead to dementia. And that's removal of some proteins, deposition of others, and our lifestyle factors. So it's a very complex, multifaceted, it has multiple different angles. Now, the way you live your life, and there are specific factors, they do matter when it comes to brain health. And when Dean and I were kind of, trying to summarize the entire data for Alzheimer's prevention into a few pages, when you write a book, it's tough because you have to summarize everything, right? You have to give it like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's difficult, but to kind of give it like some shape for this conversation, there are essentially 5 different factors that have been studied well in the realm of brain health and prevention of Alzheimer's disease. And we gave it an acronym called Neuro, Neuro, because we're neurologists, self-serving acronym. So N is for nutrition. The food that you eat matters a lot. And we have specific studies that look at dietary patterns like the Mediterranean diet or the MIND diet. For example, in one study showed that people who adhere to a MIND diet, they could reduce their risk of developing Alzheimer's disease by 53%. That's huge, right? So diet matters. And then we can, go into the details of talking about what that essentially means and what that looks like. It's not in a Mediterranean area. It's not a cultural diet, but it's a scoring system. When you eat fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, seeds, you get a high score. If you eat junk food, lots of sugar, or if you don't take care of some nutrients, you score low. So it's a scoring system, basically. So that's N. And then E is for exercise. We have tremendous amount of data that shows that when people exercise on a regular basis, not necessarily, going to the gym all the time or marathons, but even leisurely physical activities, walking, not sitting behind your desk for a long time, going for a brisk walk on a daily basis, and optimally being active on your feet for about 45 to 50 minutes every day, is so important and can reduce the risk of Alzheimer's disease. So that's exercise. U is for unwind or stress management. Unfortunately, stress is quite common in our lives now. And it's not just these pockets of stress, but chronic stress. Our bodies and our biology was not made for us to worry day in and day out, minute after minute, hours after an hour. And unfortunately, we are like that. You know, there was a time when we would worry about very scary things like an animal attacking us, or, for example, not being able to find dinner or lunch. But now our worries are, oh, my son didn't come home and I'm worried. Or, for example, you worry about a loved one who is frail. You worry about your job. You worry about your finances. So this chronic stress takes a toll on brain health. And there have been studies that show that when people are exposed to chronic stress, they actually have shrunken brains. And they're part of the brain that is responsible for consolidation of memory. Changing of short-term memory to long-term memory actually shrinks. It's called hippocampus when they're exposed to chronic stress and higher cortisol and adrenaline levels. So that's U for unwind. But if you take care of it, you can actually allow your brain to grow and thrive. R is for sleep. Restorative sleep. Deep restorative sleep essentially means sleeping 7 to 8 hours every night, allowing for your brain to cleanse itself. One of the most magical things that happens during nighttime sleep is our brain literally, you know, the structures kind of, they shrink and they allow for this very elegant system called the glymphatic system, which has some cells and some fluid, like the lymphatic fluid. It kind of just goes around your brain structures, your neurons, your dendritic arborization, and cleanses it. It gets rid of the deposited abnormal proteins or byproducts that are created in this busy brain of ours during the day. So getting to those deeper stages of sleep are very, very important, and it can protect our brain. On the contrary, when people have things like sleep apnea, you know, when you keep on waking up hour after hour because you can't breathe properly or your oxygen levels go down, or, for example, when people have restless leg syndrome, or when they have to go and pee, you know, quite often over and over again, that really disrupts the restoration of the function of sleep. And so it's important. That's a hard one. You know, fixing your sleep is really hard. But if you work with a sleep specialist, go through some therapy, there's cognitive behavioral therapy, even some medication for a short period of time to kind of get that right, it's important. So that's restorative sleep. And then O of neuro is very unique to brain because, you know, you hear about stress management, sleep, food, exercise for your heart, for your body. But for the brain, O is very important, which stands for optimization of cognitive activity. That basically means keeping yourself busy, keeping yourself challenged, learning something all the time, speaking with people, volunteering. We're social beings, and our brain is made to be challenged at all times. It's very hungry for information. And when people don't challenge themselves, or they, for example, we have data which shows that when people retire and they don't do anything, if they had a challenging job, they actually have a faster decline in their cognition. Within a year or two, they kind of start showing some symptoms of cognitive decline, which is very worrisome. So keeping our mind active is very important. So that's NEURO, neuro. Nutrition, exercise, unwind, restorative sleep, and optimizing cognitive activity.
Yeah, it's, oh my goodness, it's so important to have a balanced lifestyle. And I've seen it, all those things help and hurt all of the folks that I've worked with that have dementia as well. I know the last one in particular, Optimize, I, it just hurts, it hurt my heart as someone who worked in activity therapy to see our folks almost be like caught on something I call like the permanent cruise ship, which is they were so obsessed with entertaining them constantly. And it's just, you could tell it made them more disoriented and more confused. And
Yeah.
when you start employing something like dementia Montessori, where you break down tasks and help them be successful
Yeah.
at the actions of keeping a house or things like that. So I guess what I'm trying to say is someone with dementia can definitely still use neuro for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very important for us to talk about this because and differentiate between the two because you're a lovely audience. So you're speaking right now to caregivers
Mm-hmm.
mostly.
Yeah.
And these are amazing 2/3 of caregivers are women. And I myself was a caregiver for one of my grandparents when she was experiencing dementia. So for caregivers, it's important for them to know that they need to take care of themselves, and this is great information for them. Unfortunately, because of the stress, because of the burden of caregiving, they could potentially be, I'm losing my voice too, at a higher risk of developing cognitive impairment. But there's, this is not fear mongering or anything. I think what you and I are trying to do is kind of equip them with the right kind of resources to take care of themselves because of the tremendous stress that they're experiencing. On the other hand, when it comes to dementia patients, it's important to know that, yeah, maybe these risk factors might help with people who still, have some capacity to take care of their activities of daily living. For example, they are able to dress themselves, they're able to eat, they're able to make some decisions along with the help of their caretakers. But there comes a point when instituting these lifestyle factors are not only not helpful, but they could potentially be harmful as well. So say, for example, if I have a person, a loved one with dementia, and it's very stressful for them to exercise, it just causes a lot of anxiety. Or for example, for me to keep on harping on the fact that, oh, you need to drink a smoothie, you need to eat a fruit, you need to eat a vegetable. And if that's causing a lot of stress, we have to realize where that point is, where beyond that, we're actually causing a lot of pain by instituting all of these lifestyle risk factors. So when I work with my patients, I tell them that, yes, absolutely. There's data, there's research that shows that when you choose healthy lifestyles for your loved ones with dementia, it definitely slows down the progression of dementia. But you have to find out what they can and what they cannot do. Finding out their strengths and their limitations is crucial, because we probably will be doing harm if we push something that's not going to happen at all. So, in advanced dementia cases, what I tell my patients is like, yeah, you probably definitely would benefit from some medications. Say, for example, they can't sleep, or they're so anxious, or they're so scared. Anxiety is at the core of the symptom of Alzheimer's disease. And in my clinic, one of the major things that I do, almost I would say 80% of the time, is try to get rid of that anxiety and the fear that comes along with dementia. But if you could actually make something fun for them, like for example, going on a walk is fun because you listen to music with it, or have them start dancing with you in the living room, that's great physical activity. Or make a really nice smoothie and really kind of jazz it up and make it taste like ice cream, fantastic. You're going to get some berries, woohoo, that's awesome. So something that brings joy to them, because those moments of joy are more important than anything else at that stage.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've seen some folks in the comment talk about like, what does Neuro stand for again? So I just wanted to get like a quick refresh for those who missed it.
You got it. All right. So Neuro, come on, remember this, guys, okay? It's going to be a memory touch for all of you. N is for nutrition. E is for exercise. U is for unwind or stress management. R is for restorative sleep. And O is for optimizing cognitive activity, which essentially means keeping your mind challenged and active.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's such an important point, because and so I recently became a parent, and it's definitely been kind of weird to see all the similarities. Like, it's just wild. And what I found is goodness, if you are going to, as a caregiver or as a parent, if you try to take each thing like, okay, I have to make a smoothie, I've got to then go on a walk, like you're gonna burn yourself out really hardcore. So I find myself doing kind of like what you're describing, multiple things at the same time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have to be there, because you may know this better than anybody else. Even with the lack of remembering things, with dementia patients, they might have difficulty remembering facts and sequences, but they never ever forget feelings. They will always remember feelings and how you made them feel. So it's important for us to make sure that that's a priority. And if we are overwhelmed, they'll definitely feel overwhelmed as well.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah. I know a lot of us, especially those who are 24/7 caregivers that are watching right now, have seen like maybe they forgot the fight, like the content of the fight, but like they're just like mad at you. They're like, I'm mad at you, but I don't know why. It's so interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And the flip side of it is one moment of joy, one joke, one smile completely flips the script. It changes that mood very, very quickly. So that definitely is a blessing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm seeing some questions in the comments here. So aside from you're talking about lifestyle factors, like there's some folks saying, like is ADHD a risk factor? I know recently a study came out that said if you don't use hearing aids and you have hearing loss, that
Yeah.
could increase your chances of all. Like, is there anything else that would increase the risk that could be helped?
Yes, absolutely. So we did talk about lifestyle risk factors, right? These are the things that we do every single day, but everybody's different. And we have to, on top of what we do every day, also figure out what our risk factors are and what kind of disease burdens we may have. So there have been multiple studies again, and so everything I'm saying is evidence-based. For example, when we all kind of reach our midlife, say for example 40s and 50s, the risk of having high blood pressure and high cholesterol and diabetes goes skyrockets, especially in the United States, unfortunately. And it's because of our environment and the stress and so on and so forth, multiple reasons, right? um, Studies have shown that when people have unmanaged high blood pressure, like if your blood pressure is kind of always on the higher side, not even like super high, but on the higher side of normal, what that does is it starts damaging the small arteries in our brain that provides fuel, nutrition. Hold on one second. Let me show you a model of the brain.
Oh
I
yeah.
carry my props with me. Yeah, of course I do. I'm a neurologist.
Oh, awesome.
So when you look at the brain, and this is just a model of the brain with like large arteries, but they've actually measured the length of arteries in the brain, and they've said that if you had to span like all the arteries in the brain and put it end to end, it would span 400 miles. So imagine the tiny little like hair-like arteries that are in our brain. And if this gets damaged when you have high blood pressure, there are parts of the brain that doesn't get enough oxygen or nutrition. And what happens is people start developing memory problems, or they start walking very slowly, or it just takes them a long time to remember a name. And it might not be something drastic. And we kind of feel like, oh, this person is kind of, getting a little slower. We usually say slow, and they're walking, they're thinking, they're not as sharp on their feet anymore. That could be vascular dementia. And so that one of the best things to do is for people to measure their blood pressure at least once a year when you're in your 30s, maybe at least once a year when you're in your 40s. But then if it's kind of on the higher side, you might as well invest in, one of these blood pressure machines that you can get from any pharmacy, or the drugstores here, and check it on a regular basis. The other thing that increases the risk of dementia is high cholesterol. People who have high LDL cholesterol, so there are different types of cholesterol, and LDL cholesterol starts damaging the same arteries that I was talking to you about. Keeping your LDL level on the lower side is very important. Multiple studies have shown that when people have high LDL, especially during their midlife, so see, the damage has to happen for a long period of time for the brain to kind of start seeing the effects. And when people have high LDL cholesterol, and that usually happens either because of their genetics, your LDL is high because your mom and dad had it, or because of your eating patterns, when you're eating a lot of, say, for example, junk food or fatty food or a lot of red meat for that matter, your LDL levels go high. So keeping it on the lower side is important. And how do you do that? By eating a Mediterranean or mind kind of a diet, which means eating lots of fiber containing foods, which are greens, beans, vegetables, fruits, whole grains, other kinds of legumes like tofu, tempeh, nuts and seeds, and then reducing consumption of high fatty meats like red meat, processed meat, even coconut oil and palm oil. You may be surprised because there was this thought that coconut oil may be good for the brain, but it is one of the major sources of saturated fats. And so we need to keep our saturated fats on the lower side, which are found in coconut, palm oil, red meat. And we need to take more polyunsaturated fatty acids, which are found in nuts and seeds and fatty fish and algae and things of that nature. So that was cholesterol. And then the third thing that people need to be aware of is their diabetes. Diabetes or pre-diabetes is a major risk factor for dementia. And the same way that blood pressure and cholesterol starts damaging the arteries, diabetes does it as well, and it starts damaging the neurons. And when people have abnormal sugar levels or they don't get treated for their diabetes, that could increase their risk of developing dementia later on.
Absolutely. I saw somebody in the comments ask, is there like an ideal cholesterol level if we're wanting to edge our bets to not getting dementia?
Say that again. I'm sorry. You kind of got cut off there.
Sorry. Yeah. So is there like an ideal like cholesterol level that we should be aiming for if we want to reduce dementia?
Yes. So, LDL has been known to increase the risk of cardiovascular disease as well. Anything less than 70 milligrams per deciliter of LDL is a good number. Cardiologists say that when you have one other vascular risk factor, like for example, if somebody has high cholesterol, but also they have high blood pressure, they need to lower their LDL even further to 55 milligrams per deciliter. So that's the magical number. I want to address something that one gentleman actually is saying. He said, type 3 diabetes, we need to start using that term like the rest of the world. I need to clarify that. Type 3 diabetes is not a diagnostic terminology, and neurologists and neuroscientists don't use that. It was essentially created or used by a researcher who was studying the effect of diabetes in the brain. And she said, oh, type 3 diabetes. When we say type 3 diabetes, it basically means that Alzheimer's disease is mainly driven by diabetes, and that's not the case. There's so many different things that can potentially end up causing Alzheimer's disease. It could be, like I said, blood pressure, cholesterol, head trauma, poor nutrition, lack of exercise, some genetics, some inflammatory condition that people may have had for a long time. Sleep apnea can actually increase the risk of Alzheimer's disease as well. You were mentioning hearing loss. So the hearing loss is interesting, and there have been multiple studies that have shown that when people don't get treated for hearing loss, if they have hearing loss and they don't wear hearing aids, it's almost as if you're isolated. And when we know that when we're isolated and we're not challenged, basically the brain kind of withdraws. The brain is used to high energy conversations and challenge, and when that's not there, it kind of slows down. So getting treated for hearing loss is very, very important. This doesn't apply to individuals who have been deaf since birth or since very early age, because sign language and them being cognitively active actually provides that kind of optimization. So only for individuals who start developing hearing loss later on in their life.
Yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense for sure. Yeah, so we're getting towards the end of our time. So I guess any last thoughts on helping with dementia symptoms if you already have dementia, or preventing dementia?
Yeah. I think it's very important. It's almost like a PSA. And I want all of your lovely audience to actually know this and spread this, is there are a lot of people who claim that dementia can be reversed, and that's not true. So far, we don't have that kind of a treatment where we can reverse dementia. Yes, the FDA has created these new medications. They're still in experimental phase, and they have shown some good numbers. And there might be some people who might be eligible for that, but that number is very small, and that's usually during the very, very early stage of dementia, mild cognitive impairment. But please don't listen to anyone who says that dementia can be reversed in its latest stages. I find that very unethical. And these, pills and vitamin concoctions that you see on the news and on infomercials, unfortunately, there's really no data that supports that. But we do have a lot of data that shows that we can prevent it, and that's good enough. And even in the mild cognitive impairment stage, so you have mild cognitive impairment stage, which is the very early stages of cognitive impairment, where people have only memory problems, but they can do everything for themselves. And then it's early dementia, and then it's moderate dementia. So mild dementia, moderate dementia, and then severe dementia, right? Once you kind of enter the moderate and severe realm, there's really not much that one can do to reverse the symptoms. But we have studies that show, for example, when people have, a good lifestyle, whether that's a combination of diet, addressing vascular risk factors, exercising, they were able to reverse mild cognitive impairment and get back in the normal range of neuropsychological testing or memory testing. So we have data there, but we really don't have data that we can reverse late stages of dementia. And I think it's very important for us to know, because a lot of people are hurting. And sometimes, unfortunately, on Instagram and on the internet, there are these individuals who take advantage of these individuals seeking help and playing with their hopes. But regardless of that, I think we all need to be aware and spread this message of hope that we can stop, we can prevent this. For the most of us, we can prevent this devastating diseases. And it doesn't start in the clinic or in the hospital. It starts in your living room. It starts in your kitchen. It starts with your conversation with your loved ones. So, the decisions that we make on a daily basis, the food that we put on our plate and on our loved one's plate, the walk that we take or we don't take in the morning, the decision to turn off TV and go to sleep as early as possible at night and not do, late night binges on Netflix. Or, for example, making sure that we manage our stresses. And if we can't get rid of them, at least stay organized enough so we're not affected by it. And then just engaging with life and keeping ourselves busy, keeping ourselves cognitively active, learning a new language, learning a new dance, learning an instrument, musical instrument. I'm learning piano. Oh my God, how painful is that? But I know that my brain is getting challenged. Dean is actually playing the guitar. Those are important things, and that really gives us the resilience and the reserve to stay healthy, brain healthy for the rest of our lives.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time and your knowledge and sharing all of this. I'm with you, and that there's just so many snake oil people promising, X, Y, and Z in the world, and you just want to give people the best information possible that's evidence-based, and I love that.
Definitely. Thank you so much for everything you're doing. I absolutely enjoy your reels and your videos and your conversation. I think it's those day-to-day impact that we make in our loved ones' lives or our persons with dementia that makes a huge difference. So thank you for everything you're doing. And thanks to your lovely audience for being here and listening to the conversation. Thank you, guys.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.